A common perception or urban myth is that most Vietnam veterans came back and they were mentally screwed up. They were either on drugs, they were homicidal maniacs, they were mentally unbalanced. And I'm here to tell you that it's only the helicopter pilots that came back that way, because you have to be a moron to begin with and more than half crazy to fly helicopters in general. And then to fly helicopters in combat, you have to be an absolute moron. I was always interested in aviation. I got very interested in aviation in general, and helicopters in particular, in the late 1950s when I was in high school. And in the process of deciding what college I would go to, a lot of my decision was based on which colleges had ROTC, and in particular Army Reserve Officer Training Corps programs, and of those which had Army Reserve Officer Training Corps programs, which ones offered flight training. Like any good news, there's bad news. I wanted to fly Army helicopters. I wanted to fly helicopters, and of course this was a great way to do it, the only practical way to do it. The bad news part of it is, once you're a military pilot, you really don't have any choice of where you're going to go or what you're going to do with the helicopters. I was absolutely convinced that I was going to go fly VIPs and dignitaries and high-ranking military officers somewhere out of the Army helicopter detachment, like in Verona, Italy, which is outside of Naples. You know, that would have been great. The second thing was they had another flight detachment in Paris, France, so I was convinced, hey, you know, I'd be in Paris. And the worst case situation is I'd probably get assigned somewhere in Germany. Wrong, wronger, very wrong in that order. In the early 1960s, 50 years ago, the United States government decided to help the government of South Vietnam, a small country in Southeast Asia that was being attacked by its neighbor to the north, North Vietnam. The problem was to fight this war in a country that was very mountainous in some areas, a lot of jungles in most areas, and in certain areas full of water, because this was a tremendous area of rice growing, and rice growing happens in paddies, which are fields that are flooded with water most of the year. The U.S. Army became aware of the fact that they needed helicopters to transport men, supplies, arms and ammunition, artillery, food, fuel, building supplies, even to bring in laundry and mail. Because of these geographic barriers, they used a tremendous number of helicopters. This is the AH-1 Cobra helicopter. It was designed specifically as a gunship. It carried a tremendous amount of armament. The Cobra is about 55 feet from the tip of the forward rotor blade to the tip of the rear tail rotor blade. It weighs about 10,000 pounds, all fully loaded with the pilot and the instructor. It can fly about 200 miles an hour. This is the reason why a lot of U.S. troops were able to come home safely. It's just amazing to say, can you come through experiences like I've been through and still say you're happy? Absolutely. What a country. The only problem is that I have to admit that I used to be a helicopter pilot.